What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Core Conversations for a Monday morning. And we have John Blanchfield, aka JB Pilates Trinidad and Tobago in the house. So what's going on? And JB, we're coming at it right now. So I'm gonna invite you on.
All right.
Hey,
What's going on, man?
how are things?
Good. Things are good. We'll just go from there.
Okay, so I'm John Blanchfield. My business is JB Pilates. I'm in Trinidad and Tobago in Port of Spain, which is basically downtown. Well, close to downtown. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. How far from downtown are you? Like, is it like a suburb downtown? Of downtown?
No, I'm in, how should I put it? So we have the actual heart of Port of Spain. I'm in an area called Woodbrook, but
Okay.
I'll usually put like my street name and Port of Spain because I'm literally like maybe, depend if it's good without traffic, I'm literally 5 minutes from the heart of downtown.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So I'm in Mississauga, which is like on the outskirts of Toronto, but it's like 25 minutes. So
Right. I
it's,
used to live in North York actually when I
oh,
was a
for real?
yeah.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Very cool. So then, are you doing Pilates out of a studio? Are you in your home? Like, where do you work out of?
So it's kind of a home slash studio. So right now, it's basically a home slash studio, but I'm in the process of renovating. So I'm going to break down this structure and then
Okay.
put up a new one, which is going to be the studio downstairs, and then I'll have a living space upstairs. Right now, it's just one level.
Okay. So
Yeah.
like just like live work residence type thing.
Yeah.
Very cool. Always been curious about it. Like, in just in the West Indies in general, do you know much about what the Pilates culture looks like in the West Indies, like in Trinidad and Jamaica, all those different places? Like, how much of a collective is there in that regard?
There are a couple of people. So, for instance, there's my studio. The lady that I trained with, which is Madeline Miller,
Mhm.
she's the one who I did my MAT certification with, and I'm doing my reformer certification with. There's
Okay.
another instructor. So Madeline is she teaches balanced body. Like we get our certification from balanced body with her, but I
Okay.
think she is body control and balanced body certified. I'm not too clear on that, but I know she has a connection to both.
Okay.
There's Alexa Cheeks. She is Stott Pilates.
Mhm.
Um, she's someone I used to do classes with. There's another person. She does only mat. That is Kim Grimshaw. She only does mat. And then there's a new lady who just came on the scene just about last year. I think she's Stott trained because I think she trained with Alexa.
Okay.
Um, Lori Lachlan, I think is her name. So there's four actual studios. There are one or two people that will do it like, in a park or one-on-one sessions with people, but they don't have
Yes.
official studios. And as regards the other countries, I know there's definitely one in Barbados.
Okay.
Um, I have a friend who I used to work with. We did our MAT certification at the same time.
Mhm.
She's in Curacao, I think. She
Mhm.
does she works full time, so she does a little bit of Pilates on the side. I don't know if she's still doing it because we haven't spoken in a while. Um,
Okay.
I think there's something in Jamaica too, because I follow like one or two people that have popped up in suggestions from the Caribbean.
Yes.
So anytime
Yes.
anybody from the Caribbean pops up, I'll follow them. There's a guy, I think he's from Martinique, but I think he's based in France. I'm not too sure about that one.
Okay.
But it's not too huge a community, but it
Mhm.
is starting to kind of grow a little bit as people start to look for other avenues. And I think what's been happening a lot too is a lot of people are getting a lot of injuries, I guess maybe just from work or
Yes.
whatever may be happening. I'm seeing a lot of spinal problems with people. So
Okay.
as they finish at their physio, I think as Pilates becomes a little bit more known, then before it used to just be the physiotherapist might recommend yoga, but now they're recommending
Uh,
yoga and Pilates. And as people see
yes.
it on TV and stuff too, it's growing a little bit here as well. I really was surprised actually that I would be able to have just this as a business because I worked in IT before, but I got laid off. So I'd always wanted to be a Pilates instructor. So I figured I would have been able to do this on the side and still have to look for
Yes.
part-time work. But as soon as I opened up the studio, I was pretty much able to just get by on doing this.
There you go. Yeah, it's great. I mean, well, yeah, I mean, you're like a pioneer. Like everyone's thinking like, oh yeah, this is just yoga, right? So, like
Say that again?
sorry, so people are thinking like, well, you're a pioneer in some regards because I'm sure people just dismiss it as yoga and you're just a guy teaching yoga, right?
Yeah, that's the first thing that I get a lot of yoga calls, actually. People will call the studio and asking about how much of my yoga classes. So I kind of have to explain to them what I
Yes.
do and then kind of refer them to the yoga studios. Now, yoga is a pretty big thing here. There are quite a few yoga studios in Trinidad.
Okay.
Pilates studios,
Interesting.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. So then what's your elevator pitch? Like if someone says to you, what do you do? What's your response to that?
Well, so first thing is I'll say I'm a Pilates instructor, and then they'll be like, "What? What's that?" Because most people
Yeah,
in Trinidad don't know what a Pilates instructor is. Um,
right.
so I'll tell them that just basically I'll break it down for them just to let them know it's mat exercises, low
Mhm.
impact. You focus on your breathing and your mind-body connection, and then we also have machinery that you can incorporate in it as well. So that's basically what I'll tell people when they ask what I do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And then what about for athletes? I mean, like there's an appeal to people who have injuries, but like have you tapped into more the performance side and connecting with people in that way as well?
I have thought a lot about that. So my instructor, Madeline, I know that she does do a little bit of work with athletes, but I would like to take a course that's specific to athletes before
Mhm.
I start offering that. I mean, like if an athlete did come to me, I would work with them for sure. But before
Yes.
I advertise specifically for athletes, I do want to take a course in that just to learn a little bit more about the mechanics and exactly what they need.
Mhm. So okay, so let's dive deep a bit technically there. So what do you think the gap is? Like, what do you think you need to learn there?
I
Did you
would
catch that?
say understanding the physiology between just your average person and then a sports person. I'm assuming that the
Hmm.
course would also give me, things specific to different types of disciplines. So like what a golfer needs, what a runner needs,
Yes.
and you can look that stuff up. But again, I want to take something specific where I can sink my teeth into it and really get that
Yes.
education. Right now, I think just understanding how I would need to tailor things specifically to the different disciplines. I think that's where the gap lies.
Gotcha. Do you have a sport background?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because that's usually where I start. It's like, okay, well, I never played golf, so I'm gonna go take some golf lessons, understand golf,
Yeah.
then take golf conditioning. Who was it? It was on. Well, actually, in the past few weeks, I've had a few people who have come on who have said the best thing that a Pilates instructor can do for their career is take a workshop other than Pilates.
That's a very good point, actually. It is.
Yeah, yeah, I've been musing on that because we think, okay, well, if I go and take in this example, not that you're gonna do this, but like the example would be if I go take a Pilates for athletes course, I would be better served taking a squat and deadlift course or a functional movement screening course or you know what I mean, something like that. Because once you dive deep into the mechanics and the science behind it, and you overlay that with your Pilates, you're way further ahead than if you just took a Pilates for sports because they're kind of regurgitating that information anyways.
That's true. I never looked at it that way. That is a very interesting point and an interesting way to look at it.
Hmm. Well, I think of it from a business perspective too, right? Like I could go and take a Pilates um, studio management course, or I could take a course on business management in general, right? And then you learn with a broad stroke brush how to do things that you could take back to your course. So I don't know, it's just interesting. I've just been thinking about the different ways that I could learn that would enhance my toolbox.
That definitely makes sense because, as you said, it's going to be very targeted to
Mhm.
Pilates. But if you're taking it just generally, then you can take, because you're kind of taking what that person has gained from Pilates and what they are teaching you, which is good. But when you
Yes.
get the broad course, you can take specifically what you want and
Yes.
apply that. And you may even come up with a totally novel way of doing something that the person who was teaching you the Pilates related course did. So yeah, that's a
Of
very good way of
course.
looking at it.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? Because you're going to put your signature on that, right? And then
Yeah.
that's what makes us unique. So, yeah, my brother's Ferbert right there, and he was just saying Adam said that. Adam McCady was the person who said that, and he does some Pilates, exercise science Pilates courses, some workshops. So I can send that to you later because he's really on that point. And here's a comment from Marcia that just popped up too. It says, to me, it is more about taking a course outside movement or exercise, a course on teaching, photography, a course, a language course, etc. Yeah, and I think that's cool too, because I've taken like a guitar lesson, for example, and then you learn to be compassionate in the way that you teach exercises, because now you're trying to pick up this complicated guitar scale and you can't figure it out. It's the same as I show someone how to do a push-up. I'm
Yes.
like, okay, we're just going to do this and go. And they're like, whoa, I don't know. So it gives us compassion, and it also shows us different teaching techniques too, right? So we're always learning, and I love finding different ways to get, different ways to teach and present this work. So
Yeah, the thing for me is that because I have the way my studio is, it's a very small studio. So I'm basically doing one-on-ones and then house calls as well. So
okay.
the time factor, like right before COVID, my schedule was completely booked. And like I mentioned to you the other day, now that COVID's been here, it's given me a chance to kind of work on my reformer certification. So for me,
Yes.
the tricky part about taking an additional course is the time factor, because
Time,
and
yes.
that's also one of the reasons why I want to renovate. Because if I only have one-on-ones, there's only so much money I can make. I do need to be able to
Yes.
have group sessions. But the
Right.
thing for taking a course right now is definitely time. That is like at a premium right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Can you talk about how you found Pilates?
Well, what happened was I always was into some form of exercise, but
Okay.
I moved into an apartment and there was some leftover DVDs from the previous the previous
Okay.
tenant. So one of
Yes.
them was, it was not Mari Windsor. It was, I can't remember the girl's name. She has black hair and very blue eyes. I've seen a couple of things online with her. And it was a
Somebody in the
very
comment
basic.
section help us.
Yeah,
Anybody?
it was
Okay.
very basic, and about maybe a 20 minute. She had like a 20 minute, I think a 30 minute or something. So I started doing that with her, and then I mentioned to another friend who's very into exercising about that, and she was like, "Oh well, I have this Mari Windsor DVD. She does Pilates as well." So I started with that, and then I changed jobs, and the job that I went to, they had a gym on site,
Okay.
and there was a lady offering Pilates there. So I started with her. Then she left, and then one of my coworkers, the same one that I did the mat certification with, her neighbor, which turned out to be my eventual instructor, Madeline, had started doing Pilates from her apartment, and then she started a studio, and that's when I started it like officially at a studio.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
I'm trying to remember why I ended up going to Alexa. Um, I think for some reason, my instructor had gone to England for a little while to get some training and go on vacation. So then I went to another local studio, which is Alexa. That's the Stott Pilates based one. And then pretty much I'd always wanted
Yes.
I really liked Pilates a lot and I wanted to become an instructor, but nobody was doing the course here. I would have had to go to the States or go to England to get certification for that. So when
Yes.
my instructor came back, she was certified to be able to teach. And then things started to kind of change at the place I was at because it was the oil and gas industry. And our company was bought over by another company. And my job was basically no longer around. So it kind of worked
Right.
out well that I just transitioned straight from that into, by then I'd gotten my certification.
Okay. We just lost the sound, audio. Still no sound. Do you want to log off and come back on? Can you still hear me? No, eh? No. Okay. Okay, so let me sign you off and I'll bring you back on. He's in Trinidad and Tobago, actually, Marcia. Yes. Okay, so let me sign you out and then I'll bring him back in. Okay. Let me get him back in. There you go.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so basically that was it. So as I got let go from the other company, I just transitioned straight into this. And then with the reformer certification, I wanted to go for that. And I think I got some additional funds came in from somewhere. And I said, well, let me do the course. And then I bought the reformer around then too. So that's
Perfect.
basically how I got into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was your experience of like doing DVDs at home and just figuring Pilates out on your own and then going to your first like live class?
That was very interesting because
Yes.
the DVD, the first lady, the verbal cues. Now that I understand what a verbal cue is, the verbal
Yes.
cues are not quite the same because
Okay.
again, she has like a specific time frame. She has a specific script that she has to go through. Um, with the Mari Windsor, that was a little more verbal cue oriented and a little more about the engagement. But
Okay.
when you get to the class, and especially Madeline, she's an amazing teacher. So
Nice.
she really gets you to engage where you need to engage, recruit where you need to recruit. So that took things to a whole other level. Like when you do the 100 on a DVD and then you do it in class, properly instructed and properly guided, world of
Yes.
difference. So
World of
yeah, it
difference.
was
Yeah.
a vast difference. You think you know it, but you don't know it until you
Yes.
get to the class.
You didn't roll in like I've been doing Pilates for 2 years. This should be light work.
Well, I won't say Madeline and them are the pioneers. I'm more an early settler. That's what I would say. They're more the pioneers.
Okay.
I'm kind of on the
Too funny.
second bandwagon.
Yes. Nice. That's awesome, man. The so now the reformer cert that you're doing. So are you doing like are you gonna kind of work through and do almost a comprehensive and get into all the different pieces, or like what's your thoughts on your process with the
Well,
equipment?
studio space right now just allows me to have one reformer. When I do the renovations, I should be able to fit two reformers in. Just space wise, I could probably start with one of the chairs, maybe.
Mhm.
But again, space wise, I'm very cramped for space here. So right
Yes.
now, it's basically reformer and maybe chair down the line, but
Yes.
we'll
Yeah.
see what happens with that. So I don't really plan on getting all the equipment, getting certified in all the equipment, but
Mhm.
definitely reformer, maybe the wonder chair.
Very cool. And then what about guys? So did you get a lot of guys into Pilates at this point in your studios? Being a male, just seeing like not like a female or a
Um,
dancer doing it?
right now, yeah, it's usually people who have injuries, guys that have injuries that are referred to by their physiotherapist.
Okay.
So they will come for that, especially like a lot of back issues where they have to do very low impact stuff. I don't
Mhm.
think I've ever had anybody come who has not had some sort of physical issue that makes them have to do something low impact. It's
Gotcha.
usually somebody that has some sort of injury. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That'll be interesting to see over the next few years. That'll be interesting to see over the next few years, John, how that evolves, right? Because like usually it does start with just injury correction, like exercise for corrective measures, right? And then eventually people are like, oh, I'm feeling better. Do you think this will help me with my gardening? Do you think this will help me with you think this will help my son with his soccer? Do you think, and then it moves from there,
Yes.
right? So that'll be cool. I'd be neat to watch that transition.
I would, and that's the thing. When I do actually expand the studio, I do want to offer something specifically, like for gym people, just to challenge them, like give them a little week challenge, or you get through your first class without having to stop and you don't pay for the class. That's always been on my mind to just expose to a lot of gym people, because I
Yeah.
think that they do have like a couple of friends of mine who or clients who have come as well. When they also go to the gym, they're like, Pilates, why are you doing that? That's a waste of your time. You're not doing anything with that. And so there's a particular view with some people in the gym world here that Pilates is not beneficial. So I would like to get them open to that, even if it's a free class, and just let them see what this thing is really about.
You want to crush them, don't you?
Well, I don't want to say that before it actually happens, but I really do.
Yes, that evil Pilates
Without
laugh.
injuring them. Without
No,
injuring them.
of course, yeah, no, we don't want to injure anybody. We just want to make them feel it for
Yeah,
3 days. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So now you have some posts which I really loved, and can you tell what is the other site that you do posts for?
Oh, so that was actually, so when I first started out, well, I like doing photography and amateur stuff. So what I
Okay.
started out doing was Pilates full time, and then I was doing content for people's Instagram pages on the side.
All
So
right.
this was a stationery company, a one lady stationery company. So I used to do posts for her. So I would gather her stationery, take the pictures, and do the posts. Sometimes she would come up with the comment. Sometimes I would come up with the comment. So that's what that one was based off of. But unfortunately, because of COVID, everybody took a financial hit, so she had to end her contract with me.
Yes. Well, this is her free shout out.
That's Paper Addict, TT.
Right. So, and that post you reposted, I don't know if I took a picture of it or not. I don't think I did. No, I didn't. Okay. But in it, you were saying to give space to be quiet.
Yeah, so it was basically it. So one of the things that I would do with that post is she would want one post would be a picture of her product, one would be a quote from someone. So that was a quote from Michelle Obama about getting a place to be quiet. And it was just as COVID was beginning. And I'm not on social media too much. Like I originally started like this Pilates page just to basically advertise of the services that I offer. And I've gotten a couple of clients through that. But once the business picked up, I really wasn't on this too much. So
Okay.
I know a lot of people who were getting stressed out at the beginning of COVID a lot. And that was because, they were checking Facebook and, everybody is, because you can't meet up, people are bombarding you with messages and updates and posts and memes and all that. So it was
and everyone's
just
looking so
a
good on their
reminder
posts, right?
to unplug every once in a while and, give yourself a little break and unplug from what's going on.
Yeah, and that's
And
I love that
hold on
because
1 second. Just give me.
yes. And while I'm on pause, I see so Kane, Coach Lewis, you had a question about ankle and knee stuff. So I'll get to that shortly. And then also if someone wants to put in the comment section, I know people like Marcia, there's some really, really Pilates movers there. Jarvis is in there too, and they can also answer those questions. So what's going on, John? I think we've lost the audio again. There you go. And he's going to come back. And I answer his question while he comes back. So any suggestions for workouts and internal and fixation legs after. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll answer that in a second. Let me get it back on. Hi, David. All
Sorry
right.
about that.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem. Suggestions. Okay, yeah. So there was a question that King's Coach Lewis had about a knee, and just another comment here from Megan. These chats have gotten me through COVID. Thank you for all the fun things we learned and people we meet in our community. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. So I'm sorry. So as you're saying about creating that space, those posts that we see at a time when we're like, it's almost like we're going down, and then you look, and then obviously people put their best pictures out there and their best poses, and they show their best life, and then we start to compare the worst parts of our existence against the best pictures that are so polished out there in social media. So I felt like even though that was something that you put out there just at the beginning of this COVID lockdown, it's still timely today. It's 5 months later, six
It
months
is,
later.
and it is because one of the biggest mistakes we can do is to compare ourselves.
Mhm.
Because it's easy to compare yourself to. One of the things I remind myself of is I'm bringing something different to my clients than the other people are bringing to their clients. Obviously, they're coming to me for a reason. So if I compare myself to another instructor, that doesn't make sense because that person is getting their clients for a particular reason. I'm getting my clients for a particular reason. And then two,
Yes.
I've been in this game quite a bit less than anybody else. Like if I find myself
Mm.
comparing myself to other people that, like you said, they have these great pages and all that, I just haven't been in the game as long. So again, my thing is instead of comparing myself and getting down on that, my thing is then, okay, well, instead of getting down over comparing yourself, do something to bring yourself up to that level. So don't
Yes.
just sit in it, but do something actively about it to be able to not feel that way about myself. So that's
Yes.
basically what I try and do. The comparisons are natural. You're always going to compare, and it is good to compare because it gives you sometimes a little goal to work toward, and it helps you to be a little introspective to see, well, you know
Hmm.
what, maybe I need to work on this a little bit more, work on that. But it should be constructive. And it's very easy to just criticize ourselves, but not be constructive with our criticism with ourselves. So one of the
Yes.
people that I listen to always encourages people to um, talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone who came to you with a problem. You would never say you're lazy, you're stupid, you're whatever to
Hmm.
somebody who came to you for assistance. So don't speak to yourself that way. Don't have that internal conversation with yourself
Yes.
like that.
Right. Yes. And I like that you said that because like we have this culture that is so quick to just cancel everything out and just to not give space to that. So when you say it's that criticism can be healthy and it can be constructive, or that comparing can be healthy if it's done a certain way, I like that message because that is something that sometimes that motivates me. It doesn't always send me down a spiral every time I see someone doing well. I can celebrate the fact that someone's doing well and then think about, okay, how can I get there? Like
Yeah.
healthy talk, I'm saying, like just healthy from a healthy
Yes.
perspective, not like, I
Yes.
want the same car as you, but like you're working with athletes. I want to work with athletes someday. So I'm going to take this course. I'm going to do this explore. I'm going to learn from this. Like there's healthy ways to do that.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have to remember as well that there's enough for everybody. There's always enough for everybody. So
Yes.
you can't worry about whatever else. There's
Mhm.
enough. And that's what I've learned. I did not think, as I said before, I didn't think enough people in Trinidad would be interested in Pilates because they have more established studios with instructors that have been around longer than me and they have nicer studios than me. But there's enough to go around.
Yep. Yeah, a friend of mine would say that there's like 3 billion people on this planet. Like it's like it's so far from exhausted, our resources, right? So, and then amongst those 3 billion people, there's people who are your students that are out there. So I always remember that as well, that even though there is someone who's more gifted, more talented, better teacher than I am, there's people that are really just for me that they connect with, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to get them to their
Yes,
goals better, faster, more effective than someone else. So yeah.
that's true.
Yeah. Marcia's comment here was exactly, I say speak to yourself like you would to a 4-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah. And then second part of that was like plenty of bias to go around. And Megan Mindbody Miller is saying, it can be a challenge because we are most often the product that is being judged and criticized. We have to learn to separate from that and work with our people. Yes,
Yeah.
it's true. And there's and some of the people I've had on last week, John, were people that don't have a massive social media presence, but are like really, really successful. They have really
Right.
profitable businesses. You know, they have a great teacher training programs. They have great people following them. But you just because you don't see them with 50,000 followers on Instagram doesn't mean that they're successful. They're actually just burying their head in their
No,
business and getting stuff done. So yeah, so
that's
I
it.
think that yeah, there is a sense of just like blocking all that stuff out and doing what you need to do to get your work done.
Yeah, everything has
Yeah.
its purpose and its place. You know, social media does have its purpose and its place, but like you said, get to what you're doing, and that other stuff is auxiliary. So that's my
Yes.
take
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One last piece on the on that post about this creating space was the what you said in your comments about taking time to answer. Like you don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to put a response out. Like you can give yourself space to not respond to a WhatsApp message or not respond to a Facebook thing or not like I mean we feel that because it's out there that we're like, you know, people are sitting there twiddling our thumbs for a response in 9 seconds. You don't have to respond. Like we are giving you permission to create that space, you know? That's crucial. I feel
I'm
like we're
a
so
firm believer
compelled,
in
right?
that. Yeah. Yeah, we
Yep.
don't, and like sometimes I might leave the house without my phone, and I might stop to go back and get it, but then I'm like, what did people in 1984 do when they were out on the road? If I get into an accident, there's going
Yes.
to be some way to get in contact because people were doing it in the 80s. So it's
Yes.
okay. Sometimes I'll purposely leave my phone at home, and then
Yes.
at certain times I turn off my phone or I put it on silent
Mhm.
because I know that I need this space. And then two, the thing is when you're not in a proper space, this is what I've learned about myself, I don't respond to things properly. And I don't
Properly.
help people the way that I can when my mind is not ready to take that on. And
Yes.
I listen to Dr. Brene Brown a lot, and I'm
Okay.
constantly quoting this to my friends. The most compassionate people have the most boundaries drawn. And I'm a firm believer in having
Yes.
boundaries. And
Yes.
social media, you have to have some boundaries with that. It will help a lot.
It's funny that you say that about most boundaries drawn because not that I'm saying the most compassionate person on this planet, but I'm forever on the tip of telling people to say no.
Yep,
And saying no without apology, say no without an
that's right.
explanation,
That's
you
right.
know, say no without having a better excuse. Like, I mean, it be able to just simply say no, I have a prior engagement, or just flat out no is a safe boundary so that when I'm available, I'm truly available to you instead of saying yes to so many things that I'm giving you the 9% that's left of me to be able to do it.
That's it.
So yeah, yes.
And what people
And
don't understand is that when you are at that same post, at the end of it, I quoted Zainab Salbi, where she says, when you give from a place of fullness, you give. But when you give from a place of scarcity, you're not really giving. And I think a lot of people,
yes,
when you don't draw boundaries, you're not able to give from a place of fullness. And that's
yes.
sometimes I might feel a little guilty about drawing the boundaries, but that helps me to remember that I'm not going to be able to help them in the same capacity that I'm going to be able to help them if I do lock off for a little while.
Right. So true. My wife took a picture of me yesterday on the couch, just like flat out, just half asleep, watching Netflix all day, just to show that I actually stop sometimes, right? You know what I mean? Because like that's the thing. Like it's all this, and I put it up like it's a myth that grind don't stop. You know, sleep is for suckers type mindset is destructive. We need to actually rest. We need to say no. We need to stop. Um, or it's just like an athlete. Like your work's only as good as your rest. If you don't have a recovery day, then you're not going to be effective on game day. You can't just run
It's
every day
true.
like it's game day. So, yeah. Yes, John is simply a
Hmm.
loving human being to have your living room on a Monday. There you go.
Thank you, Marcia.
Yeah, she's so sweet. But it's funny that you mentioned that scarcity thing because I did write that down, a place of fullness instead of a place of scarcity. Yeah.
Yep.
And so I'm just reading, there's another comment that came through earlier here. Coach Lewis was saying, it's crazy how social standing is now based on social media. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
it's, you know, and there was a gentleman that reached out to me. There's a gentleman who reached out to me and he's on LinkedIn and he's a Pilates instructor and he doesn't have a social media as much than just his LinkedIn profile for his business, and connected with him and he was just so encouraging and he just wrote like this great, really, really touching message about the podcast and how Kevin Lartigue, when he was on it, just some of the stuff he said. And it just reminded me once again that I'm on the social media, Facebook, Instagram, and connecting people here, but there's a whole world outside of, this screen that is doing great work out there. And yeah, we need to just continue to encourage and do our work from where we are and just know that, we are having an influence out there, man. You're doing some great work. So very cool.
Well, you too, and just as you're saying, for you, this is something that you can do, and it's needed. This kind of forum for this type of exchange and your podcast and all of those things, those are needed. It's just not that everybody has to do it or feel an obligation to do it, but this is something that clearly you do that has a benefit to the wider Pilates community. So that's just your way of doing it. Like the guy that you mentioned on LinkedIn, he's accomplishing his stuff not necessarily through a large social media presence, but each of you guys is providing a need in some sort of space because there are a lot of Pilates people who are very social media connected. So you're providing them with each aspect that they may get their learning from and their encouragement from. They may not be readers, they may not be deep into talking to people, but through your podcast, through your page, that's how they get their encouragement. So each person has their little niche for themselves.
Yes. Thank you, Coach Lewis, for joining us today.
Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. So he had a question actually. I don't know if he's gone, but I'm still going to throw up his question that he put about something about knees. Workouts for internal fixation after leg surgery. My knee and ankle have always felt crazy tight. So yeah, I think he's gone now. But like, he just there's so many exercises and stuff. I mean, that's really tough to answer just without asking more questions about the origin of it and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, feel free to message me directly about that, or I guess John, if you can field it too, and we can ask more questions and get to the bottom of that. Fascia.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely a fascia thing. Absolutely. So now we're here in Trinidad, and with the lockdown, like where are you guys at right now? Are you allowed to have people in your space? Is it just like more online? What are you guys
Right.
doing?
So right now we are slowly opening back up for the second time.
Okay.
So we had opened back up a little while ago and we got a little raise in the numbers, so things were kind of reduced again. But last week we just opened back up to have like people be able to eat in restaurants and places to be open back up at the times, the normal times.
Yes.
I think, but things have opened back up. So I just actually started back in person sessions. Before it was Zoom stuff. So I just started back in person sessions.
Nice. What was your reflection on doing the online sessions? Like, how did your clients respond to it, and what did you learn about your teaching style through that?
I think I have some who don't want to go back to in person. They're very
Really?
comfortable with Zoom. But I only did online classes with intermediate and advanced clients. I didn't do it with
Yes.
beginner clients.
Okay.
So I do find I want to correct, manually adjust and look a little better and be able to see a little, because, sometimes the quality on Zoom or Skype is not what it should be. And then I'm very cautious about introducing new moves that might have a little bit of difficulty in them if I'm
Yes.
not present with the person. So that's
Right.
kind of held me back with those advanced clients, because they're the ones that I can move up to those advanced moves, but now
Yes.
I'm not in a position to do that as much. What I do like is the timing, because doing studio and house calls, that was a little bit of a grind. Like get to one
Yes.
client and then get back to the studio, and then so that part I appreciate. But I still prefer in-person sessions. But again, they have their pluses and minuses. I think too, it's made me be much more verbally cued oriented.
Yes.
Like when I see that last little thing that they need to adjust, since I can't manually adjust them, then I have to think of a verbal cue to be able
Find
to
those
get
words.
them to kind of, oh, okay, now I get that, yeah. And what's helped with that too as well though is watching a lot more, because I have more time, I'm able to watch Pilates anytime a little bit more. So
Okay.
hearing the other people use their cues has helped me to kind of introduce a couple of those as well.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So Janelle here is just giving me a shout out to Trinidad and Tobago there with their flag.
I see that, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, and I love those verbal cues. I actually this is my challenge that I did for myself right at the beginning of the lockdown. I had a friend who has never done Pilates with me, but he'd always talked about it, like, yeah, I want to do it one day. So I actually sought him out because I knew I couldn't meet with him in person, and started from ground zero with him, introducing him to Pilates in every exercise and doing that. So I've never had him like physically got my hands on him, but I wanted to see
Yes.
how much I could get him through and how much I could find my words to teach him Pilates, digitally. It's almost like it was
Yes.
more for me than for him. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I want to, how can I do this? How can I learn? So I made that part of my learning curve, seeing how effective I can get him moving in Pilates, just being able to do it like on the screen. So yeah, some interesting things that come out of this time, and we do get better as teachers.
Yes,
Right?
for sure.
Yeah, very cool. So, and I was asking, one of the last questions I was asking, well, two of them. One is, who is your ideal client?
An ideal client for me is somebody who has sought me out. So that's one of the reasons why people have asked me if I've ever thought about advertising or doing paid posts. You can do those not sponsored, but you pay for Facebook and Instagram
Yes,
to
like
send
there's Google
posts out to
ads and
people.
all this. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but my ideal client is someone who has come to me because they have researched Pilates and they want to do it, not someone that somebody recommended it to them and they want to try it out. For me, it's someone who not understands necessarily about it, but they've seen a little bit and this is something that they're really interested in, like how I
Yes.
was at the beginning. They've
Yes.
seen it, maybe they did a couple of videos on YouTube or DVDs, and now they want to kind of get into the actual physical presence part of it. That's my ideal client, someone who
Interesting.
has sought me out.
Yeah. I love asking that question because people always have different answers. When people, like, some people love that person who, like, I call them those court-ordered people, like their doctor's like, listen, you're going to die at 48. and you're 46 right now, so go exercise. And then they walk in arms crossed, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And then you have to convince them that Pilates is something they're
yeah,
going to like, whether they like it or not. Um, and then there's people who want like, you know, so like it's just so funny how everyone is somewhere in that spectrum. So you want someone who is like looking for something, know that this might be it, and let's
yeah,
go. I hear you.
definitely.
Yeah, very cool. Nice. And then the last question I was going to ask was, what is your message for your people right now? Yeah, in the midst of this time, we kind of touched up with that create space and some other things, but like in general, what do you feel is your overarching message?
Well, it would be, you know, one, stay focused, but two, just like you mentioned before, also disconnect. So stay
Mm,
focused, but also disconnect. So you know, understand what you want, how you're going to get it, what you need to do to achieve those things, but also to understand maybe sometimes that same goal that you want, maybe you need to take a little break from it, get a fresh perspective. But I'm a
mhm.
big believer, anybody who knows me, it's a running joke among my friends about how important self-care is for me. I think I abuse that term a little much, but it
Nice.
really allows you to have a healthy mental space. So
Yes.
be focused, but also disconnect at times as well. That's my message for people.
Yes. That's a good word. People don't like to hear that because they want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, but
Yeah,
nah,
no,
no. I hear you. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, John, man. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad we got this chance to chat.
thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it as well. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Let's line up a time to do an online class together. Like just do a workout at some point. I'd love to
We
have you
will.
teaching me.
Okay,
I can
good.
teach you, and we can just flow with that. So
Yes,
we'll make that
we'll
happen.
definitely do that. I like that idea.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really